So growing up as a Sega kid, I played a lot of Sega games and a lot of Sega franchises. And as time has gone on, Sega has definitely changed their business model and they've definitely changed what they do. And a lot of Sega franchises are now missing on modern platforms. And this drives me crazy. So in this video, I basically just want to talk about some Sega franchises that I want to see brought back on modern consoles. So let's go. The first franchise I want to talk about is Virtua Fighter. Now, Virtua Fighter was huge. I remember when it came out in the arcades, and it was pretty groundbreaking as really the first 3D fighter in arcades, and people were amazed by it, and it ended up having a good run with a lot of solid games. My favorite was probably Virtua Fighter 2 on the Sega Saturn. I loved the balance of the game. I loved the uniqueness of the characters. The visuals were top notch, and it was just a really solid fighting game. Nobody really felt like any other character. There was a great balance, and that to me was one of the pinnacles of the series. And as time went on, we got more Virtua Fighter entries, and after Virtua Fighter 5 on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, it just went away. And I don't really understand this because fighting games are not a genre that is dead. If you look at Street Fighter, very popular. Mortal Kombat, very popular. Tekken, very popular. And Virtua Fighter to me is a franchise that is one of those upper echelon of fighting games. And it's a really great game and a fantastic series with unique characters and really solid mechanics. And it's a game that you could get into and it's easy to play but difficult to master. So the absence of Virtua Fighter in modern gaming is just really strange to me. So with the rise of fighting tournaments and all these contests like Evo and whatnot, I would love to see Virtua Fighter come back, and I think it's overdue. I think we're ready for Virtua Fighter 6, and we are ready to see what the future of Virtua Fighter holds. So Sega, where's the Virtua Fighter at, baby? Let's bring back Virtua Fighter. The next franchise I want to talk about is Streets of Rage. Now, Streets of Rage was all the rage, no pun intended, on the Sega Genesis. It was a fantastic series. There was also a Game Gear port and a Master System port. And 2D beat-em-ups were really big at that time. It was probably one of the most popular genres during the 16-bit era. And as we moved into the 32-bit era, gamers started to really want 3D games. And I kind of understand that. With the increase in technology, you started to see more 3D games. You saw Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Tomb Raider, Resident Evil. These were the real popular games during that time frame, and nobody really seemed to care too much about 2D games. But of course, looking back on the PlayStation 1 library and the Sega Saturn library, some of the best games were these 2D games, and some of the most playable games in 2017 on these systems are the 2D games. So 2D beat-em-ups are still pretty popular. You saw a recent revival with River City and of course Double Dragon. Double Dragon 4 just came out that used that NES style, and even a little further back you had Double Dragon Neon. So there's definitely demand, and Streets of Rage is still very popular. There's a huge modding community for these original Streets of Rage titles that Cygnus Destroyer did a bunch of videos on them. But it's pretty crazy all the inclusions they're putting into these original Streets of Rage games, including Simpsons characters from the Simpsons arcade, which is just mind-blowing. I need to pick up one of those cartridges. But definitely Streets of Rage, probably not a $60 AAA title, but if you put it on the PSN, the Xbox Live, or the eShop, it would be really good, and I think people would really enjoy that. And not just a simple port, maybe do an enhanced port or a new entry in the series, sort of like Blaster Master, or reimagining. The Blaster Master Zero just came out on the Nintendo Switch, and if you do it on the Nintendo Switch, the Joy-Cons make it perfect because you have two-player right out of the box. You can play two-player Streets of Rage anywhere you go. So I don't necessarily want to see Streets of Rage 1 through 3. I want to see the advancement of the series. I want to see more Streets of Rage. I want to see what the future can hold for this series. So definitely, Sega, you need to check out Streets of Rage. Sega was arguably one of the best at arcade racing games, whether it was Crazy Taxi, getting on a bike with Super Hang-On or Man XTT, or of course the amazing Daytona USA. Daytona, let's go away. Sega did great racing games, and they didn't do just great arcade style racing games, they also did great realistic style racing games, and the Sega GT series is criminally underrated in that genre, because basically they took the Gran Turismo formula and modeled it a little bit with a bit of Sega flair on it, and they were really solid racing games. We of course saw Sega GT on the Dreamcast and then a version on the Xbox, but after that it just went away, which is really a shame because in modern times, back then there was tons, everyone was doing realistic racers. Square did a realistic racer, Capcom did a realistic racer, so the market was definitely oversaturated, so I could see why it sort of died during that time frame. But what's really going on now? You have Project Cars, you have Gran Turismo, which pops up every now and again, and you have Forza, which pretty much has a realistic series and an arcade series. But there's not many realistic racers out there anymore, and I think the Sega GT series is a great inclusion to modern consoles. Put it on the PS4, the Xbox One, and of course the Nintendo Switch, and you have a great realistic racing game right at your fingertips if you have the Switch, or whether you're at home with whatever modern console you have. And it's really a shame because I think the Sega GT series, like I said, is criminally underrated. It's a fantastic racing game. It's still one of my favorite racers on the Dreamcast. So Sega, what are you doing, baby? Let's bring back Sega GT. While technically not a franchise, another Sega series that I would like to see brought back and actually created into a series is Comix Zone. Comix Zone was one of the most groundbreaking Sega Genesis games. Maybe not in terms of gameplay, as was that, 2D style beat 'em up, but in terms of presentation, in terms of what it was an interactive comic book where your character was going through different pages of the comic. And it was a tough game, but it was really fun, really stylized, and really well done. And of course, we never saw any more of these. I don't really understand why. I think Comix Zone could once again maybe not be a $60 AAA title in 2017, but a digital release, or a digital with a physical release at a budget price of $20 or $30. A new Comix Zone with all this new technology would be amazing. Look at a game like Cuphead that's really, innovating that style of 2D platformer or 2D action game with a unique style that was only possible with modern technology. And Comix Zone could really be a comic book brought to life in 2017. So Comix Zone is definitely another franchise I want to see Sega bring back. Another Sega franchise that has been missing in action since the 16-bit era is Vector Man. Now, Vector Man was a really interesting game. It was one of the best looking Sega Genesis games, and they used a lot of interesting technology in this 2D platformer. That was really, really fun. It sort of lacked maybe a bit of character, but what it lacked in character, it really made up for technical ability. And we saw 2 entries on the Sega Genesis, and that was it. I thought Vector Man would have made perfect sense on the Sega Saturn. You could have made it, transformed how all these 2D games were becoming 3D games like Mario and whatnot. You could have taken that series and made it into a 3D game that I think would have been really fun. And the fact that we haven't seen any sort of inclination of Vector Man anymore is a real shame, because it could have been an awesome franchise. It wasn't reliant on, things like you had guns. So you could pretty much transform Vector Man into like a third-person shooter game if you wanted to do a 3D version of it, which I think could be really fun and really popular. Use these sort of interesting graphics, not realistic style, but highly stylized graphics that are the best graphical styles, and Vector Man could really make an impact in 2017. Definitely on the lower part of my list. If Vector Man never came back, I wouldn't cry about it, but it's definitely something I would like to see at least Sega, tinker with, at least explore that possibility. And the last 2 franchises are pretty much why you're here, more than likely. It's what you expect. I'm going to throw you a curveball on one, and I'm going to throw you a fastball on the other. So first, I'm going to hit you with the fastball, and that, of course, is the Shining series. Good Lord, you had such awesome games in the Shining series, whether it was the first-person dungeon crawling style or the Sega Saturn masterpiece Shining Force 3. Excellent, amazing games. If I had to pick, I would like to see the Shining Force 3 style come back. because that game was amazing on the Sega Saturn. It was an awesome, awesome strategy RPG, which once again is very popular still with companies like Atlas making games, and of course Fire Emblem, which just has having some crazy resurgence right now. And the Shining games were awesome, but Shining Force 3 has a problem because it was originally a 3-part game and we only got part 1 in North America. It's now super, super expensive. So where is my Shining Force 3 remaster with all 3 chapters in it? Like, that's a license to print money, and I don't understand why Sega hasn't explored that option. Like, you already have the groundwork, you already have the script, you already keep the same script. I don't even care. Just make it look better, put it on modern platforms, and it would sell. People love the Shining series. And the final one is, of course, Phantasy Star, but I'm not talking about the online Phantasy Star stuff. I'm talking about the mainline Phantasy Star RPG series. Was there a better RPG series on the Sega Genesis? I don't think there was. The Phantasy Star series was an amazing, amazing RPG series on the Sega Genesis. You had 4 games come out on the platform, and Phantasy Star 4 was probably my favorite of the bunch. Just an amazing game, and it's a shame that once they went into that, you know, Phantasy Star Online model, they pretty much forgot about the core Phantasy Star experience. You own Atlas now. Why are you not making more RPGs with them? Give them the Phantasy Star license and let them have fun. Phantasy Star can make a huge impact. Once again, RPGs, a hot genre right now. So why are you not doing this? I don't understand why you're so hell-bent on Sonic. I understand Sonic is a moneymaker, but all of these other franchises that I've mentioned in this video have potential. All of these other franchises in this video deserve to be on the PlayStation 4, deserve to be on the Xbox One, and deserve to be on the Nintendo Switch. It just makes sense to me. It kind of seems like a no-brainer, and I really wish Sega would just explore these options because I think it would make a lot of gamers happy, and I think it could make them potentially a lot of money. So what do you think? What Sega franchises do you miss? Do you want to see back? Let me know in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching this video. As always, if you are new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, check out other videos on the channel, and of course, if you really like my face, check out my Patreon page. I will catch you guys next time. Later.